Your brain processes the future as a threat. That email you need to write, that project you keep avoiding, your amygdala doesn't see a task, it sees a predator. And your nervous system responds exactly as it would to a bear in your living room: freeze, flee, or fight the wrong thing. 20% of US adults are chronic procrastinators. That number only captures the people who admit it. The real count is likely higher. But here's what nobody talks about: procrastination isn't laziness, it's a biological hijacking, a survival mechanism gone rogue in a world of deadlines and spreadsheets. Your brain evolved to prioritize immediate survival over long-term planning, and your to-do list looks like a threat assessment problem to an organ that hasn't updated its software in 200,000 years. If you've ever opened a document to work and spent 20 minutes on your phone instead, you know the feeling of your own brain fighting you in real time. That sensation isn't weakness. It's your amygdala screaming at your prefrontal cortex: danger, avoid, survive. And the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that plans for tomorrow, loses that argument every time. A 2018 study at the University of Colorado scanned the brains of procrastinators and non-procrastinators. The difference was structural. Procrastinators had a larger amygdala, the almond-shaped cluster that processes fear, and their prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for self-control and long-term thinking, had weaker connections to that amygdala. Imagine a fire alarm that's permanently stuck on high volume, and the fire department can't get through because the phone line is damaged. That's your brain on chronic procrastination. And this is where it gets strange. The same study found that procrastinators weren't more anxious in general. They weren't more fearful of spiders or public speaking or failure. The amygdala only overreacted to tasks. Specifically, tasks the brain labeled as aversive, boring, difficult, or emotionally uncomfortable. Your procrastination isn't about fear of the future. It's about your brain's inability to tolerate the present discomfort of starting. This is the first real crack in the loop, that gap between the quality of the threat and the quantity of the response. If your brain is labeling a spreadsheet as a predator, then the next question becomes, what else is it labeling wrong? Subscribe if you want to keep uncovering these hidden circuits, because this is where the real map of your mind begins to show itself. And in the comments, drop the word that your brain keeps labeling as a threat right now, the one task that feels impossible to start. But here's the thing about that discomfort. It's not real. It's a prediction your brain makes before you've even touched the task. Neuroimaging shows that the amygdala fires within milliseconds of encountering a potential threat, or long before your conscious mind has evaluated whether the task is actually dangerous. Your brain predicts pain, releases cortisol, and triggers avoidance before you've had a single rational thought about the work itself. Remember that study about the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex? Now, here's what it actually means for you. Every time you avoid a task, your brain records a success. The avoidance worked. The cortisol dropped. The threat, the task, disappeared temporarily, and your reward circuit released dopamine for that relief. The next time a similar task appears, your brain remembers. Avoidance, modic relief. The neural pathway strengthens. The procrastination loop tightens. Temporal discounting drives this. Your brain values a small, immediate reward. The relief of not doing the task, the dopamine hit of a notification, over a large delayed reward, like finishing the project or feeling competent. It's not a moral failing. It's a calculation error baked into your hardware. Your ancestors who ate the berry in front of them instead of waiting for a hypothetical feast survived. You inherited that logic. But your feast is a deadline 3 weeks away, and the berry is Instagram. The default mode network plays a role here too. This is the part of your brain that activates when you're not focused on a specific task. Daydreaming, ruminating, worrying. Chronic procrastinators show hyperactivity in this network. Your brain defaults to wandering, to scanning for threats, to replaying past failures. And when you try to focus on a task, the default mode network doesn't quiet down the way it should. It keeps firing, flooding your awareness with distractions. Imagine trying to read a book while someone whispers every embarrassing memory you've ever had into your ear. That's what it feels like inside a procrastinator's brain when they try to start working. The task itself isn't the problem. The noise is the problem. And that's when the data got worse. A 2014 study from the University of Bergen tracked procrastinators over a semester. Those who scored highest on procrastination scales also reported higher levels of stress, lower life satisfaction, and more physical symptoms like insomnia, digestive issues, and muscle tension. The cortisol spike from chronic avoidance doesn't just affect your productivity, it rewires your body toward disease. The Zeigarnik effect keeps the loop spinning. Unfinished tasks occupy more mental space than completed ones. Your brain holds on to them like an open tab in a browser, consuming processing power even when you're not consciously thinking about them. The more you avoid, the more mental bandwidth the task consumes. The more bandwidth it consumes, the more aversive it feels. The more aversive it feels, the more you avoid, the loop tightens. But then, scientists discovered something that changed everything. In a 2022 experiment at Ruhr University Bochum, researchers asked procrastinators to visualize the future self who would suffer from their delay. They showed them fMRI images of their own brains, highlighting the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. And they gave them a single intervention. Notice the prediction of discomfort for what it is, not a signal of danger. Just a prediction. The results were striking. After a brief training period, participants showed reduced amygdala reactivity to aversive tasks and increased prefrontal cortex activation during task initiation. The brain rewired just by changing how it interpreted the initial signal. This is the moment where everything flips. If prediction alone can rewire the amygdala, then the loop isn't a cage. It's a pattern waiting for interruption. And the people who learn to interrupt it become something rare. The ones who operate on a calmer plane, while others stay tangled in the same noise. Subscribe to join that group, because the next piece shows how to turn this recognition into reflex. And tell me in the comments, did you feel that spike of recognition when the study mentioned the noise? Write ghost in the hardware if you felt it. Remember those larger amygdalas and weaker connections. The same thing is happening in your prefrontal cortex right now. But here's what the study proved. The structural difference isn't destiny. The brain can learn to override the prediction. The loop can be interrupted. The key is recognizing the procrastination signal for what it is. That knot in your stomach when you think about starting. That sudden urge to check your phone. That feeling that you'll do it later when you're more ready. Those are not commands. They're predictions your brain is making based on outdated survival logic, and you can learn to treat them as data, not orders. A 2019 study at the University of Sheffield tracked EEG patterns during task procrastination. They found a distinct signature: increased theta wave activity in the frontal cortex associated with mind wandering and avoidance, combined with a spike in high beta waves associated with anxiety. The brain was oscillating between escape and alertness, locked in a pattern that prevented focused engagement. The researchers called it the approach avoidance conflict loop. Your brain wants to approach the goal. You genuinely want to finish the work. But the amygdala's prediction of discomfort triggers avoidance. The two signals cancel each other out, leaving you frozen, scrolling, waiting for the cost to decrease. It won't decrease. The cost only increases with delay. But your brain doesn't know that. It's still operating on ancestral logic. If you wait long enough, the threat might pass. In ancestral environments, threats did pass. Predators moved on. Seasons changed. But a deadline doesn't move on. It grows. Here's what nobody tells you about the procrastination loop. The discomfort you're avoiding isn't discomfort at all. It's a prediction error. When procrastinators finally start a task, their cortisol levels drop within minutes. The experience of doing the work is almost never as aversive as the anticipation of starting. But your brain never learns this because you never give it the chance to update the prediction. You avoid. The prediction never gets tested. The amygdala stays loud. The proof is in your own wiring. If you felt your memory slipping or your focus fraying, this isn't normal aging. It's the cost of a life your brain wasn't designed for. The procrastination loop is not a character flaw. It's a system error. And once you see the system, you can begin to interrupt it. The first interruption is simple. When you feel the urge to avoid, label it. Say aloud, "That's the amygdala predicting discomfort, not danger." Discomfort. Your brain cannot tell the difference until you show it the difference. The act of labeling shifts activation from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, giving your thinking brain a fraction of a second to weigh in before your survival brain takes over. This is where most people read the study and go back to scrolling. But if you want to understand what's actually running your nervous system, stay with me. The next piece of evidence changes everything. The second interruption involves timing. The Zeigarnik effect means unfinished tasks occupy mental space. But the same research showed that starting a task, even for 2 minutes, dramatically reduces that cognitive load. The brain switches from threat mode to engagement mode. The prediction of discomfort is overwritten by the experience of doing. The loop breaks. A 2020 behavioral experiment at the University of Chicago tested this. Participants were asked to avoid a task for 1 week while tracking their cortisol levels. Each morning, they reported their avoidance. Each evening, they reported their stress. The ones who avoided the longest had the highest cortisol at night. But the ones who broke the loop within 5 minutes of the urge to avoid showed cortisol levels indistinguishable from non-procrastinators. The window is narrow, and it opens immediately. The third interruption is environmental. fMRI studies show that your prefrontal cortex's ability to override the amygdala decreases significantly when you're surrounded by triggers. A phone within reach, an open browser tab, a notification badge. Each trigger reinforces the prediction that the task is aversive. Remove the triggers, and the prediction weakens. You felt it. The sensation of noise drowning out your real thoughts. That feeling is your reward circuit misfiring, a running ancestral code in a modern environment. The viewer who recognizes this glitch becomes the unseen operator, someone who operates on a higher, calmer mental plane while the rest stay tangled in the loop. The exit protocol requires nothing more than recognizing that the signal you're responding to is not a genuine threat. It's a ghost in your hardware. The loop isn't your fault. It's your ancestors' survival instinct, amplified by a world of infinite distractions. But now that you see the circuit, you have the choice to interrupt it. Not by fighting the amygdala, by recognizing its prediction as false, by starting before the predicted discomfort arrives, by removing the signals that strengthen the loop. This is just the surface. What comes next, Chekush, changes everything. The next video shows you exactly how to retrain that amygdala response in 30 seconds, using nothing but your breath and an understanding of how your own visual cortex processes threat. The same mechanism that locks you in the loop can unlock it once you know where the switch lives. Subscribe before that one drops, because that technique is the difference between knowing the circuit and actually breaking free from it. And as your final move in this session, leave one word in the comments. The single task you're going to start right now, not tomorrow, not later, right now. The circuit is visible now. The ghost has a name, and the unseen operator knows exactly when to say, "That's not danger. That's just a prediction," and then begin the